of the law enforcement and elected officials group. Hopefully this will be a night where we're going to come up with some really good ideas in terms of moving forward. Ideas can be improvements, changes, some things staying the way they are, and getting input from everybody on this committee. We're going to break up into group one is what functions should police perform, and group two is employing smart and effective policing standards and strategies. As everyone knows, the logistics we're going to be separating out in group one and group two. But I did want to say that I am getting a lot of mail regarding the need for data, or the want for data, which I just wanted to say that if you go to the DCJS website, which is on our police reform webpage, the link for that, there is a lot of data that's on there. It may not be as refined as you'd like it to be, and those are some things that we can talk about. But there is a lot of data provided by DCJS, and we report the data that they ask for. So take a look at that if you get an opportunity. With that, I'll turn it over to Newell. Newell, you're on mute.
That's exactly what I was saying. This is not the ideal conditions for conversation, obviously, with trying to do this with technology, but we thought we really ought to try and move forward by separating into two groups that could have conversations and then bringing it back together tonight. And we'll try this to see if this is a way to really gather your ideas and hear from each other. You were all set in advance a suggested framework to present your ideas in. We thought that would help streamline and create some formatting that might be useful. So as you're doing your suggestions to each other, I'd suggest you follow that format if that works for you. And if you don't recall what that is, when I enter each of the breakout rooms, I'll do a reminder on that. We've set it up so that there will be one member of your group that will be the moderator. In this case, group one, what Matt talked about in terms of what function should the police perform. Mike Benvenuto is going to be your moderator, someone to just kind of keep you on task so that it makes sure everybody gets a chance to be heard. And once you've all had a chance to go around with your presentations, let's at that point break into a more common type of conversation of dialogue back and forth. And in the second group, Bill Hughes is going to serve as the moderator. And just so that in each case we have a timekeeper, we've asked Reggie Crowley to be the timekeeper in group one and Testria Hoteling to be the timekeeper in group two. We're not going to add much more structure into that to just see what evolves. We're going to we're about to go into breakout groups unless any of you have questions. And then you're all going to come back into the same room to share what each group came up with. It would be really great if you came out with like a list of what you mutually agree on as recommendations. It may be premature to do that, but at least raise what you in common agree might be things that you'd want to see in this reform plan and where you have differences. If we can kind of begin to do an inventory of that, that would really help us set up for the next step. This is also night one of this. We're going to do the same thing tomorrow night, if this works well or works good enough, to begin to at least get conversations going around this very important set of issues. Are there any general questions before we move into the breakouts? Okay, well, in that case...
Wait, is Bill talking? Bill, are you talking?
Yeah, I was saying that I still don't see, because I'm on my phone, I still don't see the boxes that you guys were talking about. I still have the thing that says tap breakout to room 2.
No, you don't need that. Bill, I'll email you the link, okay?
Okay.
To go into?
Yep. So I'll just leave here and then log in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine.
Thank you.
And those of you that are in group one, just stay here. The other group would ask you to go to that site that Oswaldo listed in the chat. Okay.
And then Newell, they're gonna have to come back to this email or this chat, after they're done. And is it an hour and a half from
Yeah,
now?
it's an
Now that
hour.
it's 6:15?
It's an hour and 15 minutes from now.
Okay, so an hour and 15 minutes.
And I'll be jumping back and forth in the rooms to give you a sense of how much more time you have. Okay.
If you're in group 2 now, they're gonna go.
I'm gonna need that link too. Mine is not working.
Okay,
Okay. Who was that?
Thanks.
that was
Vince.
Vince Dodo.
Okay,
And
then.
then Dan Almasi just joined the call. So Sherry, you'll have to send, I believe he's in the second group as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll send him the link.
Mayor Johnson is also looking for the link again.
Okay.
And
Sherry, I got the link, but I don't have any of the other stuff you're talking about, so I'm not sure. If
You
I'm-
don't need, you're gonna stay in the same room. You're not going anywhere.
Okay, can you see me?
Yes, you're in group
Okay.
1. You're gonna stay
All right.
right here. Okay,
Okay.
the people that are staying on now is Benvenuto, Metler, Morel, Weigelt, Mia, Doyle, Schuster, Rivero, Harrison, Zoni, Marquetto, and Crowley. Everybody else can disconnect and go to the next group.
Dan Almasi, you're gonna go to the other group. I sent you a link.
Okay, I'm looking for it right now. Thank you.
Wonderful. You're welcome. Thank you.
You guys got me on speaker?
yes.
Group 2?
Okay, group 2, we have, all right. All right, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yes.
I just have to get out of the other room. Hold on.
you're still in group 1.
The mayor needs a link.
Yeah, I just told Gary that.
I'm back in the same room. No. Robert, you're in both rooms.
I can kick people off if you want me to.
This is weird.
Okay, so group 1, our topic is what functions should the police perform, which plays along with what role do the police currently play in the community. Does anybody have anything like they'd like to say in reference to that?
I think you're supposed to go around, each person's supposed to have 5 minutes, Mike.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, Mike.
Reggie, do you want to speak to what function should the police perform?
Well, the most important function, obviously, is public safety. That's not only, to me, enforcing the laws, it's things like cooperation with the public, having a good rapport with the public. It all falls basically under the topic of public safety. I mean, if everybody obeyed the law, we wouldn't need police now, would we? That's basically all I got to say for now.
Okay. Supervisor Metler, do you want to say anything?
Unmute, Jean.
You're muted, Jeannie.
Okay, here I am. You called on me first. No, second. Well, I don't know. I've got, I don't have anything very well thought out, but I do have some thoughts. First of all, I wanted to acknowledge the mention that all this data is available on the state website on DCJS. So there was some discussion about whether that should be more refined. I think it's fine. It's sufficient to tell us what we need to know and to get the conversation started. So the other data that I thought might help us, like in this conversation, is, and I don't know what these books or manuals are called, but whatever the Columbia County Sheriff uses for their handbook or manual or policy manual that would spell out the guidelines for conduct, and also whatever policy manual is in existence that talks about training. Because of course, Reggie is exactly right that the goal or the role of the police is to enforce the law. So of course, I would think that we would all agree to that, absolutely. I think that for the purposes of our conversation here, I think that the question is, are there some things that the police are doing now that they're tasked with that maybe they, some other group with other experience is better suited to step up? And I think the obvious thing that most people would point to is, are there mental health issues or incidents that would be better addressed either by mental health professionals and or by mental health professionals working with side by side with the police? And I suspect that that's what, the direction we need to wrestle with that and say, there was the case, was it in Rochester where there was some guy that was naked in the street and the family called and the police came and it went really bad and the guy ended up being, I don't know, shot or whatever. And of course there was a lot of concern. And a call like that, when somebody calls up and says, my brother's outside walking up and down the street and he's naked and can you come and help? It feels like a call like that, the flag goes up, boom, we need to, whether the police go and are accompanied by mental health professionals or whether the police don't go, but mental health professionals should really be there at the scene from Jump Street. It's that case like that's pretty clear. Other cases may not be as clear, but I kind of think that that's what we're being called upon to wrestle with, which is, are there cases that where someone other than or in conjunction with the police should be called to the scene? I suspect that the other part of this question is training. Because, when a young fella comes out of the academy, he or she, a man or a woman, young man or young woman comes out of the academy, they're not equipped to deal with serious mental health issues. And all of a sudden, if they're out there on the street and something happens and really goes south, boy, that's a real steep climb for a young person or, someone who's new on patrol and suddenly gets themselves into a middle of a situation like that. So my guess is that the answer to all of this is training. And I guess now that I've been rambling for probably close to 5 minutes, Reggie, I think that what I would want to know if I was being asked, well, what do we do next? I would want to know what we're doing now. So I would want to know what training are officers receiving? How in depth is it? How sophisticated is it? How often is it? And also the second question would be, are we making sufficient use of the experts that are in mental health? And are we bringing them into the field to accompany and to support police enforcement? So those are my thoughts.
Okay, we'll circle back to that after people have spoken, because an important point there is going to be, obvious mental health issues that are reported as such. And I don't know how that plays into 911 and how much information they provide to police when the police are called. So we can circle back around to that. Matt, do you want to speak? Muted.
Unmute, Matt.
Here I am. In terms of what, we heard this in terms of the sheriff's presentation, I think the basic policing that's being done, I think is not only by the sheriff, but by our local police departments is needed. I agree with Supervisor Metler. I think training is the key. But I also think that we have an opportunity to further develop our community policing program. I know I've talked to the sheriff about it in the past. I think we have the makings of a community policing program between our resource deputies and our resident deputies in the community, as well as some of the programs that the sheriff's department is providing. And I think, if you put that together and you sort of formalize it, I think we would have a heck of a community policing program. And I think that's an important process, because, that's how you build community trust. And I think once you build community trust, it's, you go a long way in getting cooperation from the community. I think to some extent, our local police departments, or part-time police departments are doing community policing just by virtue of what they do in their areas. But I think if you take what the sheriff has and what the local departments have, and you sort of, like I said, develop it into a policy or a procedure, I think, we've come a long way to building trust back with the community. I'll leave it at that for this time.
All right. Supervisor Mia.
Hi, my name is Abdus Mia. I am only one supervisor in the Columbia County Board of Minority Supervisor in the Columbia County. I'm minority conform, and my constituency is minority mostly. Also, my community is minority. This issue is very important to me. So I like to take a little bit more time, because I try to do some issue. I believe that we can do it. So over the past years, our community make an improvement and diversify our police forces and building community trust, adopting several reforms. But recent incident, George Floyd and Taylor, people lost their trust in the police panel. And that's it. I believe we should work with the police and form and panel, create a positive change will be strength. The relation again between police department and community, there are few key points I have. So one is a leadership and cultural. The cultural, that is important. The ultimate goal is police reform to ensure institutional cultural consistence with our goal community police relation. So diversity and leadership big concern for the law enforcement agency. police department can success for law enforcement agency police department can situation creating strong effective leadership, hiring the more minority African American or other minority brown minority community. So you know that our police department has a very less minority people now working. So if you hiring that minority people, they can take any leadership, reducing communication gap between community and police department. They can gap it. They can take the leadership. So reflect the broad. We can also promoting leadership and reflected the lot of diversity promoting leader. So it could be broad range diversity including race, gender, sexual orientation, and gender identified language, life experience, and cultural background with enhanced understanding and effective in policing and community relationship. That's the important. So important is I told you that only 6% Columbia County Sheriff and Jail has a working minority. So it is important. You other minority people did not understand that the our group did not understand our minority culture too much. We need a more developed hiring the minority people in the police. That's I think. Also tracking, revolving, use the forces, identify misconduct. The resolving recent incident, law enforcement agency should adopt more system, approach the track and review potential abuse for forces or misconduct. Like a police department can use the early intervention system of the track police officer performance, arrange performance, evaluate internal review, body cam can help. So, our police department identify officer that may need a intervention before a major problem occurs. That should be reviewing the internal policy. Should be also internal accountability misconduct. Internal accountability help the police department to be clear procedure reporting misconduct. A review misconduct and advice legal action can be held evaluated department policy activities. But misconduct investigation must ensure community trust and police department and justice uh, to the officer. You can do the another citizen oversight, other external accountability. Police group can often approve different tool, extremely agency. Or, or
That's 5. It's
or
5
5.
minutes.
I want a little bit more. I want a little bit more. Is it possible? That's
How
important.
about,
Hold tight, Abdus. You may have more time at the end because the other group just started not too long ago. So hold your thought and let's go on to the next one, Mike.
Okay, no problem.
I'm just
Good
going
move.
across the
Good
screen.
move.
So
Okay.
Keith. Keith from Philmont.
Hello, sorry, I didn't hear Keith, I'm sorry. I think our function on the police department should be to ensure that the community is safe, and part of that safety is also, obviously, as most have mentioned, the trust. So right now, where we are, we have to continue to build that community trust, and we do that by being familiar with our communities, by keeping the individuals in our community safe, and the routine patrol and the community engagement is how that is best to be done. So I think that's to me what the functions and to our department what the functions of the police should be performing are. So hopefully that I yield the rest of my time back to others that may have a lot more information to share.
Community patrols you stated also.
Yeah, the interactive community patrol, like, for us, I know in our village that, we're very active with the businesses, the residents, and, with a special focus, obviously, on the younger residents in our community to build that trust with them at a very young age is extremely important. We don't have the benefit of having a school resource officer program, so we have to do that, while we're out on patrol and on the streets. And I know, as Vern has mentioned in previous meetings, that interactions with the youth at the library, at the community center, and just generally out and about in the streets, not limited to like a Halloween with a safety, but also in the summertime, doing a softball game with the youth during community day, or just to pick up, throw a football with a few youth during the summertime. So that seems to work very well to build that trust that's needed.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go to Kevin Marquetto next.
Good evening, everybody. A little under the weather, so bear with me. Just listen to some of the comments. It's nice that community policing, is which we've always worked on. Being a more rural department, believe it or not, we're rural. We do not get out on foot patrol very often. I find that to be a little setback to our department. I encourage my officers to stop at the stores and, coffee cup for a day. But we're also busy at calls. We're only a one-man unit most of the time, or a two-man on a good day. And again, it comes down to budget. A lot of the training is state mandated. I was trying to answer one of the supervisor's questions. And, firearms and 20 hours of service is usually the minimum for the year. Some of our cultural training, and I think I mentioned it last time we spoke, I think it's needed. A couple hour sessions would be good, 3-hour sessions. I would like to see more training, obviously, and obviously it comes down to budgets. And that's always the stickler in anything we do is our budgets. Trying to, I'll just address a little bit on the minority hiring. That has always been an issue in Columbia County, that we don't have a lot of minorities. I'm fortunate, I have a Latino and I have 2 Black females, which was good. I sponsored him and he ended up leaving to another agency. He thought the grass was greener somewhere else and never returned, and he never finished. So striving on the minority hiring would be great. I'm not sure how many minorities are out in Philmont or Chatham. I have more female applications than I do male applications right now. I have 5 females in the pending for a 14-man department. Person, patrolman, is almost 50-50 right now. I find that interesting, considering when I first started, I'd have 30, 40, 50 applications for the academy, and I'd sit there and interview, the top 10. This year I had zero applications for the academy, and the academy didn't go off because of schooling. It wasn't because of the COVID. I think we're going to run out of officers, my personal. I just see New York City wanted to hire 900. I basically said, good luck. So I'd really like to move towards the cultural training, towards minority hiring is great. Again, like very few minorities that apply. I've had 1 Black male apply in 10 years or 11 years. And I know Dave Bartlett had pushed for minority hiring. He went down to the college recruiting, and it wasn't very successful. I think he ended up with just a couple of minorities applying. And I don't have the answer why or why not.
That's 5.
Okay.
If I could too, we're going to be delving into that topic tomorrow night, even more in one of the work groups. So I just wanted to point that out.
Good. I think I'm about done for the night. My voice is back a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. John Rivero, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. I kind of initially had taken the position on that I was going to take notes and hear what the other panelists were looking for, because that's how we build our agency to suit the needs of our community. With that being said, our focus here at the Sheriff's Office, at least as I've understood it for the past several sheriffs that I've worked for, including Sheriff David Bartlett, is that we're about public safety. We're about community. The members of this agency are people that live in this community. They're a part of this community. They're your neighbors, coaches of your youth teams, your volunteer firefighters. We're part of this Columbia County community. As far as the role that we play a very vast role by nature of the family type atmosphere that we try to provide. We try very hard in fostering relationships with the community. And that's why the programs like the SRD program, the resident deputy program, and a lot of our community outreach stuff is on the forefront of what we do. And we like to highlight that because that's what we try to bring to, Columbia County law enforcement. It's real easy to say that, we're going to handle all the criminal stuff and so on and so forth. But, when it comes down to it, we just want to make sure that our neighbors, friends and families in this community are safe. So just trying to, without going off on a tangent, what role should the police play in our community? I would say that we are public safety officials.
Okay. Thank you. David Harrison Jr.
Thank you, Supervisor Benvenuto.
You're welcome.
I think the group has to understand that if there's going to be any major changes in law enforcement, it has to be done through the legislature. What police officers do, their duties, how they carry them out, is regulated by New York State law and regulation, and directed as such. It's not going to be that we can say, you can't do this or you can do this, or it can be done in a certain way. A lot of times the way that their duties are carried out are regulated by court opinion, where something happened out in the field and a police officer is making a 1-second decision based on their training and experience. And it takes the attorneys months and sometimes years to figure out whether it was the best decision or not. I just want to make sure that the group understands that. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't add on to that as far as the attitude in which it's carried out. And that certainly can be done, and I think it has changed over the years. When I started in law enforcement in 1984, we trained under the atmosphere that there was a war on drugs and there's a war on crime. When you have a war, you have us, then you have the enemy. And since then, it certainly has changed, and you have community policing, you have police officers who are expected to change differently. Community policing started as a special training and a special duty, to where now every police officer is expected to, carry out community policing in the way that they conduct themselves. Now, the attitude, even especially with body cameras and cameras that are out there that show how this interaction is being handled, I think law enforcement certainly has to press more in the interpersonal contact with the public, and every situation, even when there's people that are just worked up so much that they're swearing and threatening the police officers and this and that. They always have to try to keep their cool. They have to treat everybody with respect, and that's certainly what's expected now, and that's not always shown on the videos that are taken either by witnesses or whatever. I think for the most part, though, they've done very well. Law enforcement has, but that can be done. The attitude in which they carry out their duties can be done in the police academy, and that's something that can be handled, and that's something that can be changed and addressed. Do I have any time left?
You got about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
I was going to say the training. I've been out of as a law enforcement administrator for a few years now, but law enforcement agencies rely on New York State.
We lost you, Bubba.
Dave?
Looks like he's still there, but with a lost service.
Yep. You want to move on to the next?
Yeah, so we're talking about what function should the police perform. We'll go on to Shane Zoney. Shane?
Shane, you're muted. There.
Yeah, I'm working on it. You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm Shane Zoney, public defender for the county. I was always raised and taught that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was always raised and taught that the main function of the police was to maintain law and order. And even though there's some confusion as far as that I'm the public defender, maybe I'm anti-police, I'm not. My function in my role is to zealously represent people who are accused of crimes, to ensure that all their rights are protected and they get to exercise certain rights to make sure that they have equality under the law. But obviously, I also live in the community. I have a family. I'm 5'8", so law and order is very important to me. I'm not going to, be able to necessarily defend myself against somebody who's much larger than me and has some reason to seek me out or try to hurt me or my family. So I believe that is the main role of law enforcement and the police. That being said, the police have the ability to have some discretion. Though I think it's become less under the law now as to when they feel it's necessarily to make an arrest and not make an arrest. And I think there's a lot of lower level stuff that maybe many decades ago would have just been like a pat on the back and don't do something stupid like that again. And I think there may sometimes be pressure to get a number for a couple of reasons. But that being said, I'm that's my my feeling of what the proper role is. Now that being said, I think in part and parcel of maintaining law and order is having a good relationship with all communities. I think that probably assists the police in combating like real significant crime and having communities assistance. And it also helps, I would think, to deal with trust or mistrust that has developed in certain communities for whatever reasons. I will particularly took note during the law enforcement presentations in the first or second meeting. I think of a story that I think was Sheriff Bartlett that talked about, I guess, maybe younger, some kids, maybe teenage years, maybe even a little younger, about riding a ride on their bicycles and the police officer coming up to them. And to be quite honest, I don't know that they can or can't give them a ticket, but irregardless, instead of, you know, hooting and hollering or something, they bought him an ice cream. And I thought that was kind of a nice anecdote that he talked about building trust and sometimes maybe perhaps certain communities or younger people feel like the cops are, you know, rightfully or wrongly, or like just, you know, on them for whatever reason. So I thought that was a nice story and a nice thing that they do. That pretty much summarizes my my feeling as far as the proper role of law enforcement. I did, and it may not be exactly on topic, but Supervisor Metler earlier had talked about at length about the interaction with police with certain instances where an individual is clearly suffering from some sort of mental health issue. And I think there's probably a role for mental health professionals involved in that. I don't have the expertise that law enforcement does in those particular instances. I think the logistics probably are something that would need to be talked about quite a bit, because I think one of law enforcement in one of the first or second presentations had talked about how when, you know,
That's 5, Zane.
what's that?
That's 5 minutes.
Okay. So I think that would be very something that I would be very interested in having some role in discussions and try to craft something with other people that were interested in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Schuster.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to make an assumption here that when people use the term mental health, they're including substance abuse, even though they can be presenting very differently at the time of an incident. But I'm going to make that assumption because people seem to kind of lump them all under mental health. Okay, so I have to say is that I would assume, as I'm not a policeman, that when people show up on the scene of an incident that they've been called to, part of the issue here is the unpredictability and the lack of knowledge about what's really going on, because who would know? You get called, this is going on. You don't know what the situation is that you're pulling up to. And, you know, that can be a little bit scary, it can be dangerous. It could be nothing. You just don't know what it is if you're a police personnel. I mean, that's my assumption. Again, I'm not a police person. So, you know, the thought of just getting a call and making an assumption that it's a mental health issue and bringing someone along 24/7 is, to me, kind of impractical and potentially dangerous for the person you're bringing with you. They're not trained in police work. So I guess what I'm thinking is that once you show up and you see that things are a little bizarre, and there really is some legal reason to take someone in, as it were, that's the point where, to me, someone could be called in to help make a decision as to what's really going on here. Is the person impaired by some kind of drug or alcohol? Are they suffering from a mental health issue? Perhaps the family could be helpful, whatever. This is all just like off the cuff stuff that I'm saying here. So these are my thoughts. One of the things that I'm thinking for communities that are especially feeling disenfranchised are meet the police sessions. In order to do that, the police can't just kind of wander into a group. They need to have somebody, a representative in the community of whatever group it is, to have this occur, to say, here's what our reason is. With all respect, we're going to have a conversation with each other. We're going to talk about what your impression is. Feel free to say what you like, what your impression is. We will give you our reason to respond to this. But there needs to be more, I think, connection between these groups of people, as I say, that feel disenfranchised with police personnel, regardless of who it is. And I think also, as somebody who's not really a member of a minority community, I can almost say that I have to assume that when someone shows up on the scene of a particular minority community, whatever it is, and they're not really familiar with that culture, I think there's always an underlying element of fear and inadequacy, perhaps on the part of the police. And so they need to be able to learn more about that culture and not be put off by an accent or a language problem. But again, I think this could be resolved by the police kind of session. And it's important, again, as I said, to have representatives or translators available, interventionists. So things that are said are not misunderstood or misinterpreted. Because it's very difficult if you don't know the language or the culture of someone to understand exactly what it is that they mean when they say something. It could be entirely different than the typical, white American culture. It could be very, very different. It may not mean the same thing at all, but if we don't learn that, we can be put off by it and often not respond in the way we should.
It's 5, Beth.
Okay, so the other thing I would really recommend is that if unusual incidents occur, whether they're minority involved or not, and it seems a little bizarre, it would be great to have the ability to process what happened afterwards. In a clinical setting for us, if someone dies while they're in treatment, if something untoward happens, we get together as a group and we look at it afterwards and we say, I think that could have been done differently. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Maybe it was just the way it happened. But it's important to look at what occurred and see if there's some rational way to decide what could have changed so maybe this won't happen again. So I'll stop. Those are just a few of my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think everybody got a chance to speak, yes?
I see David Harrison's back on. Does he want to finish what he was saying, or?
No, I can't remember the rest of it. I just put a shout out for consolidated communication.
That's what cut him off. So I don't know, do you want to go back and talk as a group, or what other thoughts?
Well, I know I made some notes here, and the one thing I keyed on was, and I'll go to John Rivero, because we talk about community policing. Several people talked about community policing, and I know we have the resident deputy program. I've worked with the resident deputies. but I also know that people in the community, if you watch the questions, people in the community will say, well, I don't know who the resident deputy is where I live. I haven't met that person. You know, and I'm thinking as a supervisor, should we have them come in for town board meetings, or, you know, what, in what ways can you get the resident deputy more, you know, known and involved in the community? I don't know what the sheriff's department is doing in that regard, or.
Well, Mr. Benvenuto, as you are aware, because your town just got I'll say a fairly new resident deputy. You've been going through some transitions here at the office with different personnel retiring and moving on. There's also certain obstacles that we're dealing with as far as hiring new personnel, and you know, our main function is to keep patrols on the street, making sure that we have, you know, people there to answer the calls. The quick answer, I guess, is the resident deputies are listed on our website. Obviously, at this juncture, there are 2 that are to be determined because we have to wait for backfills for people to get hired to fill those positions. Resident deputies, and this is the interesting part, is they work as a unit. So let's just say that there's a Copake Community Day for Ms. Metler. Not only will she have her Copake resident deputy there, she will also have the Ghent resident deputy, the Greenport resident deputy, and most likely the Germantown resident deputy there, who's the supervisor of the program. So they all work as a unit at each other's different events. As far as introducing them into the community, they're definitely going to be present anything that within their respective towns. You know, whether it's they've been doing a lot of the birthday parties, the COVID drive-by birthday party type of things. They'll go to like any crafts fairs or any type of like small block parties in the town of Kinderhook. They have their little farmers market. The resident deputy for that area would typically make a stop by and make his presence known. But you know, we're always open to suggestions as you know, the newly appointed lieutenant. Anytime that you would like to have or any community would like to have a resident deputy there, a simple email request to me would almost ensure that that resident deputy will be at your public event, and if not the one for your specific town, due to say time off, such as vacation or medical reasons or what have you, we will make sure that someone is there to represent the sheriff's office.
Okay.
If I could add, Mike, just because we've done it in Stockport, when we have our community day or we have events, we've had the resident deputy there, as well as our own police department. We've had other deputies while the resident deputy was there doing and I don't remember the name, Lieutenant, but it was the child ID program. We've had that done, which was a big hit. We've had some of the dogs or a dog come and do sort of a presentation with their handler. So there's a variety of things that we've been able to do. And whenever we've had a new resident deputy, we've always invited them to our town board meetings as well to introduce themselves. So.
And I can put a direction out to have the resident deputies, and generally this will be done in the beginning of each year, to at least attend a town board meeting to see what direction the town is looking for, if there are any special needs or concerns that need to be addressed in certain communities, because they also will address some of the quality of life issues if there are speeding complaints or any areas of concern that need to be kept an eye on, such as a town park, what have you. They're the ones that feed that to the rest of the rank and file for informational purposes.
This makes me think about some of the comments that I heard in the more national conversation when there were people who said, well, the police should not be called in for just minor incidents or what are really, I can't think of the word, but just helping people out. That shouldn't be a community, that shouldn't be a police role. Police should be handling crime. And that made me think about my own experience, although it's been short. I've told me this is my first year. But in Copake, we happen to have the finest community officer any place. Joe Kilmer is such an asset to me personally and to our community. And just a short story. During the fall, there were a lot of problems with signs, political signs, Black Lives Matter signs, signs being stolen. A woman had a huge, great big Black Lives Matter banner. And first there was some vandalism, and then eventually it was stolen. I called up Joe and I said, Joe, you really need to go there now and talk to this lady. This is really important. And he went there. And when I heard back from that woman, she said, he is the best example of what community policing should be. And so there was somebody that could have been a very hostile situation. And instead he listened and he said whatever he said to her, I don't know, but he said all the right things. And she then knew who he was. So going forward, they had a relationship. Now, one of the things that occurs to me though, I had another call right around the same time of someone who was having an argument with the people from NYSEG because the guy from NYSEG was being really rude and saying, lady, I'm not going to take care of this for you. And she was like saying, but you're on my, anyway. I was able to call him. Now that's the kind of thing that a lot of people would say, well, that shouldn't be part of policing. He shouldn't have to go do that. It was really just a citizen complaint. I was able to call him and he was able to go and diffuse that situation. So bottom line on this is, I think that when we're back to where we started, which is what are the functions of the police? It seems to me that the functions of the police in a rural county like our own may be different than the functions of the police in an urban or suburban setting. I don't have anybody down the hall in Copiague that I can say, hey, John, can you scoot over to such and such a house and take care of a situation like that? But a community police officer who is known to the community really can do that. And so when we talk about functions, I think we need to be specific to what are the functions of the police in a rural area. And I suspect that they're different than in a suburban area where the mayor of the town has a whole staff that they can call upon to take care of issues like that.
Mike,
Yes.
I just want to add to Jeannie's. I think Jeannie's right on the money there. When I was town supervisor, we had a police officer when we had the town police. And if we all remember the bad ice storm we had some years back, and
in March,
everybody
yeah.
was on power. What we did is we had the officers go out and check on our shut-ins and our elderly. And I got a call from a lady where this officer actually went to the house. She had no heat. She had a fireplace. He went outside, he got wood, he started a fire for her. He brought wood in. And this was the type of thing that, made for good community relations. And Supervisor Maya, that officer actually is on the Hudson Police right now. So Jeannie's right. We can't compare police agencies in a rural county like ours to police agencies in New York City or Albany or Rochester. It's just a different thing. And I just want to touch on what Supervisor Meyer said about the minority hiring. Unfortunately, and I think the sheriff brought it up before, he has to go by the civil service list, and they have to score within the top 3. I would urge community organizations it shouldn't fall solely on the police departments. I think that maybe some of your community organizations could get young people interested in taking the civil service test.
Unmute, Abdus, unmute yourself.
If I could just jump in while Abdus is unmuting. Again, it's, I believe tomorrow that's going to be a topic, but I do know that Bill Hughes has several ideas in that regard in terms of recruitment and how to to get more minority candidates. So, we can talk about it tonight, but I think it's going to be also talked about tomorrow.
Okay, I agree with you. One thing, this sheriff and police department doing good job is nothing wrong, but still, I believe that you have some gap, like a gap. Lot of things like the other community police officer did not understand the really like a brown community, African American community cultures. We have to have inside somebody should take the leading. That's number one. Second thing, I tell you the one thing like a hot function. Jeannie mentioned it. Like I told you that this country is a diverse community. Like any sheriff and police officer cannot be involved in the immigration enforcement. Cannot be. That is the issue with the one of the minority community. They are try to getting into the legalized or something or immigration process. So if this is federal issue, so police department and sheriff department is not bound to do that federal issue follow up. So that's the one. When they try to follow that one, that will be gap. That's one of the function I mentioned. I agree with you. Say you need a more civil service exam in top three. That's fine, but you have to have every like a sheriff department should have any program like that, collecting the contact with the minority community, like a advertisement, like we have a job opportunity, you have a training session, you guys attended, and they will be know that then they can attend it. You have to have interested. That minority community is a bad. It's not too much. No, they are educationally fall down. They are all lot of things. There is a backside. So we have to bring in the program like that. How can bring the minority community involved in the our police department? That will be build up the community versus minority or other community relationship. So let's go. I told you, Jenny is a other community. She will be not understand the my community problem. You have to have it like me or Billy Hughes or like that, being at that community leadership, and they can understand that manage the both side police department and the community, the leadership. So they have to have it involved more. How many minority more hiring? You have a solve the problem more hiring. You see the whole usually fighting between that. This is the habit. You don't believe that racism always somewhere, everywhere, our community, other community, everything. Yeah, that need a training too. So that is my question. You need to some the like a department through the involve the community. We have an opportunity job, we have a training session, we can do that, you can create it like that. That's it, the we have to develop that. I'm telling you that is the incident involvement in the immigration law. You can be involved in the police department. You can. That's it, the problem is coming because everybody, your generation, one time faced the immigration. Now my generation face the immigration process. When the police involve the immigration, again then automatically gap between the community versus the police. That is the prime example. I tell you that I have a lot of example. That is you. We have to realize that we don't want to see fighting too much and like that, another killing like that, another incident. You don't believe that this why police from coming from them? Because recent killing. Nobody talking before too much. Now we started talking this because before killing that just flow it on others. So that's it they happen. So that is my point. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Uh,
I just want to interject for a minute that some abuse of what you're talking about will be the central conversation in tomorrow's panel that focuses really on, fostering community-oriented leadership, culture, and accountability, particularly the piece on tracking and reviewing use of force and identifying misconduct. Seems to me that's some of what you're bringing in now.
So
That's tomorrow.
I'm not that panel, so I'm not that group. I'm the other group.
Let me just touch on, we talk about, do we want the police to respond to mental health calls, substance abuse calls, calls involving the homeless? I guess my something I would need to know there is when you receive a call, how much information do you have provided going in? I mean, do you know you're responding to a mental health issue call, or can somebody speak to that?
I think, Mike, that I talked about that a little bit before when I was speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm making an assumption that when the police get a call, I don't know what they're told, but they don't always know what it is until they show up.
Right.
And so you don't know if it's a mental health problem. People don't wear a sign on them that says, I have a mental health diagnosis and I'm having a problem. The same with, substance use disorder. You don't know what somebody's taking because depending on the substance, it could be an entirely different reaction and response than another substance. And the fact of the matter is that regardless of whether it's a mental health problem or a substance use problem, there's still the potential for more problems as far as violence or unpredictable reactions. So, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying before. It's like, you're not going to know that. I mean, my opinion would be if you get a call and something, bizarre is going on and you get a call, you go out to it, not knowing what it is necessarily. Now, maybe you can make a determination within a few minutes. Maybe you can't. But I think that's part of the issue here. It makes policing very, very difficult.
John Rivera, can
You're not
John,
gonna know that.
as a police officer, answer that maybe?
Yeah, I don't know what 911. I don't know how much information they process on a call, or how much is conveyed to the police.
Well, just to give you an idea of how confusing things like that can be when we get a call. It may come in as an assault, it may come in as a domestic. And the underlying factor is that the reason it became a domestic or the reason it turned into an assault is because of a mental health issue. So it isn't something that we always know or even able to determine at that time in a chaotic scene. It was mentioned perhaps having a mental health professional join us at a call like that. A lot of times the scene isn't deemed safe for the rescue squad to come in. They're put on standby until we can actually maintain control of the scene and just get parties separated and make it what we call safe to proceed in. So I guess the long and the short of that answer is no, we don't always know we're going through mental health. In what I would call, I guess, best case scenario to get that information, it would be a call for, say, a mother calling in on her child who was known to have mental health issues that states, my son's going through an episode, they're on this type of medication, this is what their mental health history is. Only at that time would we really even have an inkling heading into a mental health call. Even with that, those calls in and of themselves by nature are an unknown as far as what you're walking into.
Okay.
May I jump in here? I would think that any situation when the police are called might in fact be a situation which involves substance abuse and/or mental health. But if we were to fashion a policy, maybe it would be something like this: that well, first of all, let me back up. Maybe there should be some question, which is part of the regular protocol for a 911 call, to ask the caller some question which would get that information out there, that there's some kind of a mental health issue. Okay, but so that might be one issue that we could think about. But the second thing could be this: if on the basis of the call, it's clear that there's a mental health or substance abuse problem, the police should make a call to whoever they call. I don't know who this person is going to be, to immediately bring that person to the scene, because at the scene, things are going to happen very rapidly. And once you get there, if you get there and then assess the situation, it may be too late. And it may be that if there was a professional there at your side, whether or not they were actually part of the conversation, they could be whispering in your ear saying, look, the way to do this is X, Y, and Z. Walk away from them. Raise your voice, lower your voice, say this, say that, talk to the mother, bring the mother in, get the mother out. I mean, if you wait until you get to the scene, it may be too late. But maybe the policy would be, if it is evident from the 911 call that there's a mental health issue, then the mental health, whoever it is, should be contacted immediately so that they would arrive at the scene with the police. If the police officer, upon arriving at the scene, assesses that there is a situation from where he or she would benefit from the assistance of a mental health professional, that call will be made immediately. I mean, what you'd have to have is the structure set up so that there would be somebody on the other end of the line who would say, yes, I'll be there, because these things happen very quickly.
To just piggyback on that, Ms. Mettler, that is what MCAT is for. So if there is something and we do have time and we can make that determination, and again, it depends on the totality of the circumstances with the response and the timing and who's there and whether it's safe or not. That is when MCAT would be called to help assist with a situation like that. And we have work.
Okay. I think in some of these conversations, what's lacking is our knowledge or my knowledge as to what takes place. So I think, oh, well, this would be a great idea. And then I'm corrected when somebody says, well, wait a second, we've been doing that for 5 years now. Oh, okay. So, I mean, I sometimes think that part of what should come out of this experience that we're going through is that the public would become more aware of protocols that are in place or safeguards which are in place. Back to the one other thing that about community policing, I would think that if we have a policy which say that we want to enhance community policing in Columbia County, I mean, I think inherent in that statement is that the community police officer should look like the people in the community. So, Joe Kilmer is terrific in Copiague. Maybe Joe Kilmer is not the right fit in another neighborhood in Hudson. So I think that's when I say community, I think what I would understand that the community officer should be part of that community.
I just wanted to thank John Rivera for mentioning MCAT. They are extremely good at both mental health and substance use disorder interventions. And I'm not sure enough people in the county know about it. I'm also not sure that people realize that their funding is limited, and that while I think their services should be expanded and continued, there may come a time in the near future due to state cuts where they're not going to be able to be part of our community. And they have been a fantastic asset.
Beth, can you just briefly explain that to MCAT?
You mean about what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so MCAT is a mental health substance abuse crisis intervention, and it's a mobile area, and they receive calls and they send people out to all kinds of places many hours of the day. They're not funded enough to do 24/7, but they do a lot. And they are extremely skilled at intervening with substance abuse and mental health problems, not just at that site, but following up and referring people to appropriate treatment settings after that. They are run by the Mental Health Association of Columbia, excuse me, in Greene County. They have, they do an unbelievable amount and quality amount of services for people. The other thing that they do is if there's a crisis in an agency with a staff member or something, for instance, a suicide or an overdose, they go in and work with the staff to try to get through that process. We had a counselor a couple of years ago who committed suicide on Thanksgiving. And on Monday morning, they were there to work with our clinical staff because she was a beloved person. Nobody saw this coming. And she hung herself on her kid's swing set Thanksgiving morning. And it was devastating to our staff. But they're the people that come in to help you process things and get through that grief and move on. And they're excellent in the community.
Mike, you're on mute.
So how are we looking?
Newell?
You have 7 minutes.
He in the other group.
Yeah. If I have a couple of questions, actually, Lieutenant Rivero. And I know that the sheriff touched on it in his presentation, but and I'm reading this out of the guidelines, so I'm not grilling you, honestly. It said, how often are complaints made about police? I know the sheriff said it's not that often, and mostly it's, you know, somebody that disagrees with the traffic ticket or something of that nature.
That is correct. In fact, he's sitting in the room across from me, and I heard him address the other breakout group on this very topic. So I'll try and regurgitate his words as best I can without quotes. But most of the complaints that we do receive, and I have been seeing them for years as I've been assigned to the headquarters, are people that just weren't happy that they got a ticket. They weren't happy that they were arrested. Of misconduct or something where, you know, the deputy used excessive force or was, you know, legitimately out of line. Not to say it doesn't happen. It has. In most cases, at least from my experience, my firsthand experience, it's been a training matter with maybe not understanding the audience that they were dealing with and using a poor choice of words. And you have to understand, by no means am I saying that I'm the top cop around here, but with 24 years of experience, I'm going to be able to deal with the situation much differently than a deputy who has 24 weeks, you know, on the job. So I can guarantee you, and Kevin Marchetto, who worked with me when I was a brand new deputy, can probably attest, you know, when you're young, you have a different outlook on things, and your badge is really shiny. You think you're going to save the world. And you have this ideology of what you think you're there to do. And as you know, you gain experience and you start to learn how to speak to people and you see what works and what doesn't. It changes how you do things. A unique thing that we have here is the sheriff's office, and this is to piggyback on some things that we said. We're not Hudson Police. We don't just have a certain type of demographic that we deal with. We're dealing with, you know, Ankrum, New Lebanon, Copiague, Chatham. We also do deal with some, you know, situations in Hudson, but we deal with all different types of races, ethnicities, socioeconomic background, and educational levels. So it does take some time for a young deputy to get his feet under him or her so that they can, you know, have better, you know, interactions with people. So as far as your complaints, Mr. Morrell, not to drag on, we don't really get that many found a complaint. It's usually somebody's not happy that they got a speeding ticket and looking to get out of it.
Just quickly with that.
Thank you.
I just need to follow up. Is the complaint procedure listed? Is it displayed on your website or how would somebody in the public know the complaint procedure?
The one place it is listed on our website is on the 828 tips line or 822 tip line. You know, a big thing for a lot of people is, at least from what I've heard, is that they were nervous to come and make a complaint because they're fearful of retaliation or how it may put the spotlight on them. That is a way that somebody can make a complaint, leave the facts, and not have to leave their name. Any other time, most people, you know, just as you maybe would do at a shopping store, they ask to speak to a supervisor. They are granted that opportunity if one is working, and if one is not working, they are told when the next supervisor is working to make that complaint. And many times, you know, as previously a sergeant, now as a lieutenant, I will get a voicemail on my machine for someone that called communications. There wasn't a supervisor working at the time. I am tasked with calling that person back to address the concern or complaint that they had.
100%.
Okay, thank you.
The other group's going to come back and join you probably in about 5 minutes. Okay. So what I would suggest is you start to think about wrapping up. And if you have specific ideas, recommendations you'd like to make that you just want to get them down now in the chat, that would be fine. But if you also want a little more time to think about what specific ideas that you have, but be ready to send those back in an email to, you know, to Mike or also to Sherry in terms of stuff so that we can start aggregating those. Because tomorrow you're going to be working with some other kinds of things. Okay.
I would like to ask Abdus if you have written comments, Abdus, because I saw you were reading some comments. Could you send them to Sherry? So we can make sure we capture everything.
Abdus, you're on mute, hon.
Oops, where'd you
Hope he
go?
just knocked himself off. He hit the hang up instead of the mute.
We'll make sure we get those.
Mike, do you have, I saw you were writing stuff down. Do you have a sort of a list of ideas that came out of this group?
I mean, generally, what function should the police perform? And it was mentioned several times: public safety, maintain law and order.
Bill, have you been taking notes on what people have been
And then
saying?
it breaks out from there. I mean, the things like important things like should the police respond to mental health issues, mental health substance abuse issues, things like that. There's a lot more information that we,
You
need
haven't,
to
sure.
consider.
Okay.
You know,
So you're
what
going to
type
go
of
back
information does
to the
911 get? How often do the police even know they're going into a, situation with mental health? If they determine that at the time, can they? I mean, they talked about MCAT. That's an important thing. If they know they can rely on a mobile intervention in a situation, I think that's important. Depending, what should function should the police perform? Well, the sheriff's department is an accredited agency, so they depend quite a bit on state mandated training. So what the state does as far as training goes, and I know that they're working on changes also, even though the state police weren't involved in this reform, but I know the state is working on changes because any departments that they work with and do training, they're going to have to update what they do because the departments will certainly depend on that.
We're going to take about a 5-minute break.
Okay.
And then have everybody back together again.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have my clock in front of me, but I show 7:31. So let's start again at 7:36. Okay. Okay. Mike, would you be willing to start us off?
I will unmute myself. Okay, so we had the topic, what function should the police perform? And the top three, generally speaking, functions, police or public safety. Number two, maintain law and order. And number three, the police should be heavily involved in community policing. And we discussed ways, and that can be further discussed, how the community policing should take place. We talked about resident deputies and how a community would even know who the resident deputies are, what they do within the community. I brought up maybe we should have them at town board meetings to introduce to the community, because sometimes they do change also within communities. We spoke about police responding to mental health, substance abuse calls, and to further expand on that, do the police always know whether they're responding to a mental health call or something involving substance abuse? How would 911 play into that? How much information do they take? Once the police show up at a scene, at a call, and perhaps determine there's an issue, maybe involving substance abuse or a mental health issue. Lieutenant Rivero mentioned MCAT, which is a mental health substance abuse mobile intervention team. And Beth Schuster expanded on that too. Those are important functions that the police are involved in, and I'd say we need to discuss further how best that could be handled. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in. Oh, the other thing was the sheriff's department, especially since they're accredited agency, they depend heavily, as do other departments, on state mandated training. So, we'll need to know how the state. I know the state is working on things, and we'll need to know how the state is going to change up their training in the future relative to this whole police reform.
What were any areas of further conversation needed? I mean, a lot of stuff was teed up that was sort of in the beginning, but what further conversations, Mike, do you see, and what would others add to that? Yeah.
There was, I think Beth discussed, after an incident, like processing after an incident. I don't know if that's something where, police agencies can get involved. Like if mental health is discussing a situation after it happens, what did we do? What could we have done better? I don't know if that already occurs, but that was discussed, having a discussion after an incident.
Yeah. Anybody else from that group? Was there a topic that you don't feel that's important to put up, at least in terms of the overall agenda, that Mike maybe just touched on lightly, but you feel is important to add a little more to? And I mean a little more. Go ahead, Abdus.
Abdus, you're on mute.
You're still on mute. There you go.
I mentioned they're more hiring the minority and community because of they have a gap between police and minority or other community. that will be resolved is the hiring of minority, how the process. It should be organized that different way the sheriff department, and they can contact with the minority community, and they have a job available, they have a training available, they have a like that, and they can also uh, local elected official help them to how to organize that way minority involvement. That's all those service reform is coming today. There are a lot of reasons, but one is the most recent incident. It is minority incident. You have to believe that. So that's it. Becoming the whole country was looking for minority reform, police reform. So that's it. The one of the toughest issue. I believe that. So we have to have a involvement to minority and diverse community, diverse promoting. So language, all one of the issue. Uh, uh, that language can access everyone. So that have to be work out something in the department. So I believe so. That's the important. Also, I mentioned that and police and sheriff cannot involve in the an immigration law. That is federal. That should be stay in the federal agency, not our local police, local and sheriff department should not involve that. That way, it will come up and closer to gap a lot of issue, and they can arrange the community meeting. They can do that, and the minority community meeting or sheriff department once a while, like 2 months, 3 months, they can do that. That is my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to Bill. Bill Hughes, please.
So thank you. And it sounds like you guys meeting is a great segue or partner with ours because mental health was a huge discussion, and Supervisor Hotel and talked about this program called the Cahoots. Would have a great deal of financial savings as well as strengthening to the community. And maybe she'll want to elaborate a little more once we get past the rundown. But she had a lot to say. Dan Amassi, had some really great points around mental health. The sheriff actually elaborated a little bit and talked about their participation in mental health programs. But mental health was a strong portion of our conversations and really dominated a lot of the conversation. Also, as part of our conversation, and this was an issue that was really being driven home by the mayor, is a community review board. And I know that Chairman Morrell, Abdus Mia, Supervisor Benvenuto, and the sheriff and I, we've all been having a lot of conversations after the first meeting about a community review panel and what would that look like. So there were some ideas thrown out there. It seemed like people were in favor of having the review panel. So now the discussion probably needs to move more towards laying out a framework of what would they do, what does that look like, how many members would you have serving, and some of the concerns that the sheriff had as far as where would the line be drawn as far as the complaints taken in. But I think moving forward on that we have a good framework around the discussion, and I think a little bit of more discussion on that would probably get us a long ways. And then another issue was around data. It was plenty of mentions about DCJS having data. The sheriff also mentioned another agency that has another program within his department that has data. But what the mayor has outlined, and he may want to elaborate on this, but what the mayor has outlined and other people in the community that I know have outlined is that the data, one, that we have may not go deep enough, but two, there really isn't a place where the public can access that data. And so if you had something out there, whether it was a website or you have something where the public can go in and freely access that data and see who was being arrested, what kind of arrests were being made. I know the department in the city of Hudson kind of were given a report on a monthly basis when they would come in about their arrests, how many people were arrested, and for what. Again, this would be a bigger, broader discussion, I think, but I think it's something that could be easily done if you get some of you brighter minds. We just had Supervisor Hotel is getting ready to graduate with her master's or bachelor's. She probably would be a good asset to helping you guys get to this point. But that's about what we went through. Mental health was definitely the issue of of our panel, though.
Anybody else want to add anything from that group to the conversation?
I would like to, please.
Yes.
Yeah, the one other thing that we did spend the time talking about was having regular scheduled meetings where the sheriff would have representatives go out to different communities in the county to have just informal sit-down conversations to talk to people about what's going on in general. This way, these kinds of conversations in the future don't always turn to, well, we have a problem. You know, if we have a conversation that's ongoing, if we have a dialogue, then people build up trust that way. And as I pointed out in my comments earlier, the sheriff already has a program that does this with youth and with teenagers. So it wouldn't be much of a leap, except for, you know, they're going to need resources to bring that up, you know, another level so that they start meeting with adults in different parts of the county on a regular basis.
I thought also something that you said, Supervisor Berry, that really captured the whole thing, you know, as an outside observer listening in, when you spoke about the whole focus on accountability and transparency, really being thematically what needs to be focused on as an overarching theme here. And I think that would be just useful to have as a framing from what I noticed about your conversation as a group.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for mentioning that. I framed it as accountability and transparency because we already have, I know that we need to do some reform. We need to have this conversation. We need to move forward. For accountability purposes, it's how these complaints are going to be handled when they're taken in, how training is done, and how folks know what kind of trainings are getting done, all this other stuff. We're fortunate the sheriff's office is accredited, and they have to take their marching orders from New York State. And maybe we could build on that, you know. And as far as transparency is concerned, that's why I like the idea of some sort of a police panel to hear civilian issues. And I don't know how it's going to be configured. And I also like the idea, again, of pushing out this idea of meeting in the communities so that folks get comfortable talking to deputies. I think I heard the mayor say that, you know, he went to school with a lot of the Hudson police officers, but he still gets intimidated walking into the building. That has to stop. And I think we stop that by having more and regular interactions with, you know, the community. And again, leaving it at this, the sheriff already does that with the kids.
Supervisor Hoteling, it looks like you got your hand up there.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base quickly. So we did talk a lot about mental health and these other programs. Definitely some concerns raised, which, you know, have been raised other times as well, about the safety, obviously, of our mental health professionals. And just looking at data and how some of the other programs have run it, I just wanted to put one data point out there. A program that's been running for 30 years, less than 1% of the time have they had to call in the police because the situation was in need of that type of support. So I'm not saying what works for other communities is exactly what's going to work for us, but I will say I was very grateful. Sheriff Bartlett and I have talked already, and he's very open to having more conversation. Dan Almasi has mental health. So the three of us, and if there's anyone here that's really like, I want to be a part of that initial conversation, obviously whatever we come up with will then come to this panel, but we're going to have an initial conversation. And if there's anybody else here, just shoot me an email if you'd really like to be a part of that initial conversation, just to talk about, you know, what has already worked in other communities, what might work in our community. It's not a one-size-fits-all model, but just the idea of making sure that, one, we're supporting our police officers by not requiring them to go to every single call that comes in that might not actually be a police call. Two, making sure that we're supporting our community members because they might need mental health support. And although our sheriff's office does a lot of mental health training, which is wonderful, you know, taking a few days training versus being a trained mental health professional is obviously very different. Just like we wouldn't call Dan to go into a police call that needed, you know, actual guns and training on how to deal with de-escalation and all of that. I'm kind of saying let's also do the opposite, which is not necessarily call Sheriff Bartlett when it might be something that Dan and his team can mitigate. So that's a little summation of that.
Dan, you have your hand up, still active?
Yes, thank you. So just a thought that I had since we wrapped up is, as we try to cultivate these new and progressive ideas, I don't want us to forget that, there might be programs and things that we can implement that are can be paired with things that already exist. For example, one thing I didn't talk about was maybe we can improve the referral process when law enforcement is responding to a call of a mental health sort. How can we at the mental health center be informed of or notified of that individual so that we can follow up and do outreach to them? Things like that, to me, I think have an easier lift to them than the idea that we talked about in our work group around mental health and activating and partnering behavioral health, mental health workers with law enforcement, maybe embedding them in the dispatch centers and stuff like that. I am really excited about those ideas, and I know that they work because they are proven to have worked throughout the country. But we can also, in the meantime, fine tune some things that already exist, such as improving the referral process and activate those types of things sooner while we're developing on the larger initiatives and cultivating those from scratch.
Sheriff Bartlett?
Yeah, Dan, to answer your question on that, I'm actually working right now with Greener Pathway and looking to see, and working with the Columbia County Attorney's Office to see how we can disseminate the information to them, and in this case also to you, when we have that type of a call, so the resources are getting to the people. So we could probably just piggyback off of that, but we'll absolutely talk about that.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Dave. I was aware of the, collaboration between Greener Pathways and the Sheriff's Department, but I wasn't so sure if mental health was being folded in. So that's really nice to hear. Thank you. Because yeah, if we can hammer out the details around how to share that person's name, how to get them connected, how to pass on their contact information when it's a substance abuse and a mental health, I think it's more comprehensive. So awesome. Glad to hear that.
Supervisor Burry, is that hand up from last time, or I want to add something else? I'm screwing your name up so bad you don't know who I'm talking to.
Supervisor Bury, your hand is up. Did you want to talk? You're on mute. Okay.
He said no.
Okay.
You have to unraise your hand after you're done. For some reason, it doesn't just turn off. Sorry.
Another thing that I thought I had handled until just now.
Sorry.
Ba-ba-boom. All right. Anybody else other than Matt want a word before the?
Yeah, I actually just want to add this, and I'm not, I think there are a lot of great things that have come out of this. And, but to be a killjoy here, I think some of these ideas we're going to have to, some of them we can do right away. Some of them we're going to have to plan down the road. And the only reason I say that in the sheriff's defense is in 2020 and then 21, his budget is in total $1.8 million less than it was in the beginning of 2020. And that's because we had a severe budget problem. We still have a severe budget problem. So I think just so people understand that going in, we had to reduce significantly, and it wasn't a defund police thing. It was, we need to balance the budget thing. And Michelle and I have had a lot of conversations about it. He's been great working with us, but it's not something we really wanted to do. But, to get a budget in balance, we had to, and it wasn't just the sheriff's department, it was our highway department. It was all departments in the county that had to contribute, I guess, is for lack of a better term. But so, I just want people to think of this as there are things we can implement immediately, but there's nothing wrong with having a timeline either. So a year from now or 2 years from now, we have certain ideas that can be implemented. That's all I have.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Well, after that, I think it's time to just talk a little bit about tomorrow night, unless there's anything to close around today's conversation. Tomorrow night, the plan is to do essentially the same thing we did tonight with the two other topics. We've selected putting you in different groups, so you'll get a chance to have conversations with some different folks in terms of it. And then once we complete these two, we'll have a set of different ideas we've heard from, tomorrow night and today and this evening. We'll have a set of ideas to share back with all of you to see what you think are the priorities to focus on first in the plan. And we'll do that, through an online process before we come back for some follow-up meetings in January. That's the general framework we're talking about, okay? So I've got 1 minute till we technically have hit our timeline. Thank you all for, putting in, this is not easy, and the technology doesn't make it any easier, but it really, it's been very useful listening to both meetings. I've had the chance to get a sense on really the sincere commitment you all have to trying to make Columbia County a better place and improve your whole law enforcement system. So thank you for your efforts, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
Thank you,
Same
everyone.
station.
Thank
Thank you all.
everyone. I will be sending out, I still have to send out the link for tomorrow night, and I'll figure out how we're going to do tomorrow night's meetings again. I'll
Sounds
work
like
with
fun.
Oswaldo. Sorry, and thank you for your patience.
Thanks,
Thank
Sherry.
you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Sherry.
God for Oswaldo. You're welcome. Thank you, Oswaldo. Thank Oswaldo.
Thank you, Oswaldo.
Newell, do you want to stay on for a few minutes to
Yeah.